Hello and welcome to the Rum Revival. My name is Arminder and today I'm covering 3 rums from Paraguay that are brought to you by the folks over at Rolling Fork, who are an independent bottler out of Indiana. Now these 3 rums are part of a 6-pack of rums that Rolling Fork is selling on their website for $200 for all 6. That's like what? $33 a pop. Now I'm just going to be focusing on these 3 Paraguay rums in this video. The other 3 rums are Jamaican rums from Hamden Estate, which is obviously very exciting. And yeah, I will be covering those 3 in a separate video. Now, will they be releasing these individually? I think so. Currently on their website, you can't. You have to buy all 6 of them at the same time. But my understanding is, at least I know with this one, they're going to be pricing it individually, if not on their website, in retail, so potentially maybe online through them you can only get it a 6-pack. I'm not sure. I should have asked before I filmed this, but here we are. But maybe you'll be able to get these individually on their website. If not, maybe you'll be able to get them individually at retail, or maybe not at all. Again, should have done my research. Now, full disclosure, all 6 rums were sent to me by Rolling Fork. They asked for my address, I gave it to them, and here we are. So, as I talk about these rums and share my thoughts on them, just keep that in mind as you watch and listen. Now, all 3 of these rums are made at the Legado Distillery in the Arroyos y Esteros region of Paraguay. So let's actually first talk about the first rum here, the Pampas Zorro, and this is named after the national animal of Paraguay, the Pampas fox. And this is a unaged, overproof cane juice rum. It's made from locally grown sugarcane, the juice of which goes through a 15-day open-air fermentation using a local yeast that's kind of, traditionally used for baking. And that fermented cane juice is then double distilled on a copper pot still with a retort, and then it's bottled for this release at 60.5% ABV. All right, let's give this one a smell. So, you know what? This has, first thing I kind of noticed is a herbal quality, a little herbaceous, but there's also that cane sweetness that you kind of hope, or I kind of like to get out of cane juice rums. But there's also like a tropical fruit juice kind of aroma. Not like banana, pineapple, more like vaguely mango, vaguely guava. Yeah, I think this is one hell of aroma. Huge fan of it. And it reminds me of something, but I'm not going to tell you what, because I want to first take a sip of it and tell you what it tastes like, because also on the palate, it kind of reminds me of what the smell also reminds me of, if that makes sense. So let's get in here and actually give it a taste. Cheers. So, first thing, kind of notice the texture in the body. It has a nice amount of oiliness here. The other kind of sensation that I get on the initial sip, and frankly every subsequent sip, is the intensity of the alcohol, right? This is 60.5% ABV, and you notice that, right? It's not alcohol, like it's not pure like ethanol, but what I'm trying to say is you feel like an intensity of spirit, of rum, right? Now that being said, it's not harsh, right? I think it's kind of coming in that direction. It's a little rough and tumble, but it never gets to the place where it's harsh and not enjoyable. Now, in terms of flavors, like I got in the aroma, I get this herbal quality, like a little combination of fresh herbs, a little bit of dry herbs, like a little bit of green there for sure. There's also like a earthy quality here, not like dry dirt, but just kind of earth. And part of that has to do with like the fresh herbal quality. I think that and the earthiness are a little kind of combined. And just generally, there is a tropical fruitiness here. Again, like with the aroma, not pineapple, not banana, kind of playing in the space of, but not explicitly like mango, maybe not explicitly guava, but kind of in that wheelhouse. And there's also kind of with the herbal quality, there is a floral quality here as well. Almost like a white flower, like a chrysanthemum. Now the thing that the aroma and the palate kind of almost immediately, when I first tried it, reminded me of, and then I was like, this can't be right. And I kind of, every session I've gone back to this, and even now it still reminds me of it. And my wife actually commented, at least on the aroma, she's not really drinking alcohol right now, but she smelled it. She's like, hey, wait a minute, this kind of smells like a clarin, a Haitian clarin. And that's exactly what I thought. Specifically for me, the aroma and the taste really evoke Claret and Sajouse. And Claret and Sajouse is one of my favorite cane spirits, rums or whatever. And this very much is playing in the same space in terms of flavor and aroma. I think where the difference is that the higher ABV here adds more intensity and roughness and rudeness. Rude not in a bad way. I think it's the second video where I've said rude as a positive thing, or at least a neutral thing, not a bad thing. And it just has some bite, some crunch to it that Sajouse doesn't. Sajouse feels a little more refined in relation to this. But both of them have very similar flavor profiles. I think if I'm going to sip on that flavor profile, I am going to go with Sajouse. It's lower in ABV. It's less of that intensity, that roughness. But the question, of course, is cocktails. How does these flavors do in cocktails? Because I love Sajouse in a daiquiri or a tea punch and all sorts of other different cocktails. How does this do? Well, I'm going to go and make myself a daiquiri, and I'll be right back. So, cheers. Man, that is great. Delicious daiquiri. To me, the big note I get is a little bit of herbal quality, a little green, but also some like mango, some underripe mango. Here, that mango note that I kind of was dancing around as a neat pour is a little bit more in focus in the cocktail. And of course, with the dilution, the lime and the simple, a lot of the rougher notes of the spirit are kind of softened and tamed, making it's frankly much more kind of approachable and drinkable. Yeah, I would think this makes for a really great daiquiri, and for me, that is going to be my preferred way of drinking the rum. Well, like I said, I do enjoy the flavors neat. I think the intensity is a little too intense, or the ABV is a little too much. Yeah, I could proof it down, but frankly, the Sajouse kind of scratches that same itch in a little bit more of a palatable kind of package. But I think for like daiquiris, and I think especially for like summertime frozen cocktails, like your strawberry frozen daiquiris or your slushy blended drinks, this will be great in them because the high ABV will cut through a lot of that chill and the ice and all that, and give you the flavor of the herbs and the mango, while still having some kind of warmth and intensity of rummy alcohol, just given the high ABV. All right, so let's move on to this next rum right here. I'm not sure exactly what to call it. It's not entirely clear. I'm going to call it Pampas Fox. This is Pampas Zorro. I'll call this Pampas Fox because there's a little fox here on the label. Though maybe you should call it the Paraguay Malbec expression. I'll get to that in a second. But when you look at this label, it says, for both of these two, it says like the Wisdom of Age rum. And what the Wisdom of Age is kind of like a series that Rolling Fork does. And Rolling Fork describes that series as featuring limited releases of rum to illustrate the variability in flavor profile achieved through the use of different types of casks. Now, this rum here is actually a great example of that, because this rum starts off as this rum, as far as I can tell. It comes off the still, unaged cane juice rum, the same kind of process, but the difference is it's aged 22 months in Paraguay in French oak Argentinian Malbec casks. Now, Malbec is a type of like red wine. That's literally all I know about it. I don't know jack about wine, frankly. All right, so let's give this one a smell here. The aroma here feels a little lighter, actually, than here. This was kind of very bright and pungent, and you got all those flavors or aromas right away. This, you kind of have to spend a little bit more time with. Very red wine forward, very jammy, very kind of fruity, dark fruit kind of situation. Dark fruit, dried fruit situation. There is some of the fresh herbs here as well, for sure, but I think they are now sharing space with, like I said, with the wine notes. But definitely the distillate is kind of, maybe not playing second fiddle, but it's a little lightened, and the other kind of barrel notes are definitely heightened. All right, anyways, let's give this a taste. Cheers. Now, for as much as I got the red wine on the aroma, I'm not getting that level of that on the palate, which I'm kind of totally okay with and kind of glad, frankly, right? Because when I first smelled this, I'm like, wow, I can really smell the red wine influence. Oh my God, I hope it's not overly kind of red wine-ish on the palate. It's not my thing usually, and it's not, which is a relief. I think the French oak comes through, a soft French oak quality, and I think a very soft kind of wine, fruity flavor sweetness thing happening here. The notes that I primarily kind of latch onto is a little bit of dark fruit and a little bit of chocolate actually on the back end. And I actually really like that combo. So yeah, I actually think as a sipping experience of the two, I'd much rather actually sip on this, which is nothing I usually will say between an unaged distillate and its aged form. Like Clairin Saint-Just and all the other Clairins, when I have tried them like unaged and then in different single cask aged expressions, 100% of the time I feel like I've always picked the unaged expression. In this combination, as a neat sipper, I actually would prefer the influence of the Argentinian Malbec wine cask. And I think if it's aged, frankly, another year, I think it might be a little too much. You know, I think you'd lose that diminished but still there heart of the distillate if you add another year to it. But I think here is like perfect. If you maybe even in like another month, and I might not be digging it, but at what is it, 22 months, I'm vibing on it for sure. Now the last rum here is the we'll call it the blue passion flower for lack of another name, and I say that because there's a blue passion flower on the label, and that is the national flower of Paraguay. Now this rum is actually, instead of being made from cane juice, it's made from cane honey or cane syrup. So what they do is take the cane juice, and I don't even know if it's from the same cane varietals or not, but they heat it and reduce it down, not to the point that you start creating crystallized sugar and creating molasses. No, you heat it down to the point where it gets concentrated and reduced down, but again, no sugar crystals, no molasses. But that cane syrup or cane honey, if you will, goes through a very similar 15-day open air fermentation using a local yeast that again was traditionally used for baking, and then it is also double distilled on a copper pot still with a retort. And then of course the main thing here is that it's aged 30 months in American oak ex-bourbon casks, and it's bottled at 60% ABV. So what I'm getting here on the aroma that I kind of like is a little bit of rose. Rose as in the flower. Not rose water, though I think those are sort of similar, I don't know, but rose. But there's also a lot of, or a decent amount of oak, maybe even a little bit of like chestnut, and there is like some slight char here, and a little bit of like pencil shavings. Anyways, let's give this a taste. Cheers. So, like with the aroma, I get that taste of chestnut, and I think I'm conflating two different types of chestnuts here. Chestnut the wood, and by that I mean the smell of chestnut, and chestnuts, the nuts, the seeds, whatever the hell chestnuts are, right? Like the taste of chestnuts. I'm kind of bringing those two flavors together is how I'm describing this flavor of chestnut. There's also some oak notes here. There is a herbal quality here. It's not as pronounced, and definitely not as pronounced as here, but not even as pronounced as in this one here. It's a little different. I get a little black pepper. And the other thing that's very obvious to me is this is, comparing the two aged rums here, this is sweeter, or just has more of a, not cloying, but like the texture, the mouthfeel feels a little more sweeter. And the other thing I get here is a little bit of nuttiness. And it's not like sherry nuttiness, which is like its very own unique kind of thing, or very specific kind of thing. This is more slightly peanuts, maybe roasted peanuts, boiled peanuts. Yeah, for me, of the three, the cane honey ex-bourbon cask release is my least favorite. There's some notes there, like that overall sweeter quality that I'm not really vibing on. I'm not a huge fan of that kind of chestnut flavor that slight nuttiness here. I really do wish that the cane honey version, that we got the unaged expression there, so we could kind of compare it to the aged. That 30 months of ex-bourbon aging, not something I'm overly wild about, not really digging it. It's not bad, and I think there's probably a type of rum drinker that might enjoy it. But I think, to me, the more, if you're only going to be able to buy one of these 3 bottles, that's actually hard, because it doesn't say this, but then it depends on, if you like sipping, then maybe check this one out. But I think if you find yourself mostly enjoying your rums and cocktails, go with this. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's my recommendation. I hope this was helpful and useful. And I do think I really was blown away by what this rum is doing. And I really am super, super curious for other folks who eventually do get to try this. How does it taste like a Clarin? Does it taste like Sauge Juice, or just broadly speaking a Clarin? Because I really think it's kind of in that wheelhouse. And so yeah, let me know if you have tried it, and if I'm, totally off the mark or totally on the mark. And yeah, anyways, that's this video. Hope it was useful, and keep an eye out for some time in the future, whether it's a couple days from now or a couple of weeks from now or a couple of years from now, who knows, a video where I do the other 3 rums in this Rolling Fork 6-pack, which are 3 Jamaican rums from Hampton Estate. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch y'all next time. Cheers.